So, shalom, shalom, dear friends, very distinguished guests. Welcome in our Polish Institute. I am very happy for your coming. So today our meeting is dedicated to the art of the posters, so-called engage art. The Polish Ministry of Culture and Heritage, together with the National Cultural Center, organized an international competition, White, Red, White, which was dedicated to the mobilization of the Belarusian Society for Democratic Change. White, red, white. There are also the colors of the Belarusian flag. More than 200 works took part in the contest. Showing these works in abroad is a proof of our solidarity with the Belarusian people. We Poles know how important solidarity is. What is the price for freedom? Poland stands with Ukraine and Poland stands with Belarus. I would like to say thank you for my team who are organizing today's meeting. A lot of thanks for Madam Director Anna Raduchowska-Brochwicz. A lot of thanks for Julia Mackiewicz-Caban. She will also moderate this event for us. A lot of thanks for Agata Kryżewski. Huge thanks for Julia Borysenko, our friends from Ukraine. Julia is here, this gentle girl is Julia. And a lot of thanks for Tomasz Kosakowski. He cannot be today with us, but yesterday in Warsaw his son was born. So Tomasz, if you hear us, a lot of congratulations for you, for your wife, and of course for the new baby. Dear friends, how I told, thank you for your coming. Thank you to Magda Kukuła, the charge d'affaires of at interim from our Polish embassy. Thank you for Consul of Lithuania, Madam Andrea Stadler. Can you show your?
Andra Stadlerian.
I'm sorry, it's Lithuanian is too difficult. We are on the border, but it's still too difficult to yes, Consul Andrea. So thank you, my friend Lea Ganor from Mashmut Center, and of course, a lot of thank you for Adi Farkash from the Deputy Director of the Begin Center in Jerusalem. So thank you all. Today is with us Batia Donner. She is a lecturer and curator, and she will guide us about and tell us about the posters. Thank you so much that you are with us. So today we will host also via internet Madam Swiatłana Cichanouska, political activist, candidate for president of Belarus. Chapeau, Madam Cichanouska. And also our guest via internet will be Polish ambassador to Belarus, Mr. Artur Michalski. Excellency, thank you so much. And I think that maybe we will have also another guest. So, I repeat, Poland stand with Ukraine, Poland stand with Belarus. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Good morning, everyone. And now we will listen to the video message of His Excellency Artur Michalski, the ambassador of Poland in Belarus, actually residing in Poland due to the circumstances. So, please.
Madam Director, thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to join you and all those who gathered today to express solidarity with the Belarusian people. The exhibition you are going to see was created last year to commemorate the second anniversary of the fraudulent elections in Belarus. The International Poster Contest and the subsequent exhibition, which you will have the opportunity to see today, had been organized by the National Cultural Center in Warsaw and the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now, thanks to the Polish Institute in Israel, you can see this exhibition as well. I think all of you know the tragic situation in Belarus, but let me remind in just a few words. In August 2020, the Belarusian people manifested in spectacular, peaceful mass demonstrations their desire to live in a free country. In the 21st century, in Europe, in Israel, in the United States, and generally speaking in the free world, it is obvious that the votes of the people should be fairly counted, and that it is up to the people to decide who will govern the country. But this absolutely basic right, which gives people the freedom to choose their authorities and shape their own destiny, has been violated in a blunt manner. I don't want to say that the problem with basic freedoms in Belarus began in 2020, not at all. But for the first time in the past 25 years, it became obvious that the majority of the people want a different path of development, not autocracy, but democracy. For this desire to be treated fairly, they paid an enormous price, the price of long-term imprisonment, forced exile and terror, and even the ultimate sacrifice, the loss of life. Let me remind you, according to available human rights defenders from the organization of Vyasna, there are around 1,500 political prisoners right now, but in fact the number is even higher, much higher, several thousands. More than that, hundreds of thousands of people had to flee the country. The largest number of them escaped to Poland and Lithuania, the immediate neighbors, with whom Belarusians share centuries of common history, a common history also shared by our Jewish brothers and sisters. Along with the entire Belarusian nation, the large Polish minority, a historic, natural and indispensable part of the Belarusian society, enormously suffers. Let me recall just one name of the famous journalist Andrzej Poczobut, who is serving a long sentence in prison. Let me also say that nearly 20 cemeteries with the tombs of Polish soldiers were devastated, simply leveled to the ground. Not monuments, but real tombs with remains of the people. Is it not enough to fight with the living? Apparently not. Some people say that the spirit of these repressions reminds that of 1937. Yes, not on this scale and by the same means, but should it comfort us? We are already in the 21st century. With this exhibition, we would like to show our solidarity with the Belarusian people, our neighbors, the brave people fighting for freedom, for the right to be treated with dignity and for the independence of the country, which is clearly under serious threat. Especially right now, when Russia launched a war against independent, sovereign Ukraine, and when it used Belarusian territory for attacks. Poles have had a very complex history. We lost our independence for more than a century. We had wars, especially the last one, when Germany and the Soviet Union invaded us in 1939, when we lost millions of lives and our Jewish brothers and sisters were doomed to total destruction. The Holocaust, the word which will resound in our hearts forever. But more than 30 years ago, after decades of the communist slavery, Poles regained their freedom, took their country back and started the democratic process. Everyone who remembers those peaceful and victorious fights of solidarity in the 80s of the past century knows that the desire of the people brings about miracles. It happened in Poland. We are free, and there is no reason whatsoever why the same could not happen with our brave neighbors, the Belarusian people. This is why we are gathering in the Polish Institute and we are talking about Belarus. It is not a coincidence, because like our story of solidarity, this current story of Belarusian struggle is a right cause. It is a matter of freedom. Today our neighbors are in need. They need our support, safe refuge, and a platform to be vocal, to tell the world their own inspiring story, to share their pain and share their hope. I hope this contribution of the Polish Institute in Israel can be rightfully recognized as an important gesture of solidarity. Once again, thank you for this, Madam Director, and a big thank you to all of you who decided to be guests of this event. It was a good choice. As a conclusion, let me recall the strong belief of Aleś Białacki, the founder of human rights organization Wiasna, the laureate of the Nobel Peace Prize, now being held in prison. Nothing can stop people's thirst for freedom. After the long winter, the spring will come.
And before we proceed on with the speeches of our distinguished participants, guests, I would like to warmly welcome Mr. Alexei Guriev, who is the representative of the Belarusian minority here in Israel, who has helped us greatly promoting this event, and who himself been in Israel only 7 years, right? And later on there will be possibility of discussing the situation in the context of the today's event and posters. So thank you very much on behalf of the Polish Institute for your support, and also for bringing more of the representatives of your community. And dear ladies and gentlemen, now we will hear the message from the director of the Belsat TV, Agnieszka Romaszewska-Guzy, first in Polish and later on in English will follow.
Wystawa, która jest teraz pokazywana, powstała z inicjatywy Polskiego Ministerstwa Kultury. Jest obok konkursu pomysłu, jak wesprzeć białoruską, handel białoruską, białoruskie środowiska twórcze, których bardzo wiele osób znalazło się poza granicami kraju. Jak wesprzeć ich po tej takiej pokonanej rewolucji 20 roku. No i w tych plakatach widać jeszcze bardzo dużo śladów tego 20 roku. Widać bardzo dużo akcentów patriotycznych. One są w kolorach biało-czerwonych. Jak wiemy, biało-czerwono-biały to kolory narodowe białoruskie. Widać tam motyw palców, literę V. Jest jeszcze bardzo dużo takiego, jest też bardzo dużo jeszcze ciągle nadziei. W tej chwili, gdy ta jest prezentowana w Izraelu, jesteśmy już w trochę innym momencie historii. Myślę, że Białoruś zeszła z pierwszych stron gazet. Może dlatego właśnie jest bardzo dobrze zobaczyć tą wystawę i przypomnieć sobie, że na wschód od Polski znajduje się nie tylko Ukraina, ale także Białoruś i że ten kraj także ma swoją historię walki o wolność. Bardzo często plakat jest takim zresztą również na przykładzie plakatu polskiego powojennego. I ten plakat dokładnie właśnie ilustruje to, co dzieje się na Białorusi i zwraca uwagę, a naprawdę trzeba zwrócić uwagę na ten kraj. Zapraszam Państwa do obejrzenia tej ustawy.
Agnieszka Romaszewska-Guz, director of Polsat TV, says, the exhibition you will be seeing was initiated by the Polish Ministry of Culture. It was created through a competition to support Belarusian migrants and especially creative groups who found themselves abroad after the failed revolution of 2020. The exhibition aims to aid these individuals in their creative pursuits. Displayed posters showcase numerous references to the revolution of 2020, often incorporating patriotic elements in Belarus, national colors of red and white, a recurring motif of fingers arranged in the letter V. They are symbols of hope. It is worth noting that the exhibition is currently being presented during a time of historical significance, as Belarus no longer receives media attention. It's beneficial to view the exhibition as a reminder that Belarus, located east of Poland, also has a notable history of fighting for freedom, similar to Ukraine. Posters often serve as means of expressing collective emotions, reflecting the social climate and events. It is also evident in the post-war Polish poster and is relevant to current events in Belarus. The exhibited posters shed light on the situation and encourage us to pay attention to this country. I strongly recommend remembering this exhibition. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as it was promised, Madame Cichanouska will address message to this event and to the initiative of the exhibition of posters.
Dear Miss Director Magdalena Kushtal, dear Miss Batia Donner, dear friends, Shalom Aleichem. It's an honor for me to greet you on this occasion and to assume patronage over this exhibition of Belarusian political art. I would like to especially thank the Polish Ministry of Culture for organizing the exhibition and the Polish Cultural Institute in Tel Aviv for hosting it. We Belarusians feel at home both in Poland and Israel. Our three nations have very much in common. For centuries, Belarus, the same as Poland, was a dear home to Jewish people, and the first country in the world to adopt the Yiddish language as one of the official languages. Throughout the last century, many of our Jewish countrymen were coming to Israel to build and defend the Jewish state. And today, Poland became home for hundreds of thousands of Belarusians who seek refuge from tyranny. Belarusian protests of 2020 made history of our struggle for independence and democracy. They also became an important chapter in the history of Belarusian arts. Never before have Belarusian people shown so much spontaneous creativity, wit, and humor as in those days. Artists and art were at the forefront of our struggle. Remember Haim Sutin's Eva. This famous portrait became the symbol of the protests. Eva was probably the first woman arrested during the election campaign in 2020. Unfortunately, not the last. In our peaceful street protests, the role of placards and posters was especially important. No matter where they were made by professionals, such as our famous designer Vladimir Tesler, or by talented amateurs. As you can see for yourselves, this tradition of political visual art is alive among Belarusians. At this exhibition, you can see posters from our competition with the topic of Free Belarus that we announced about a year ago. The turnout was amazing, and so are the works. And today you can appreciate them yourself. Thank you all for coming and supporting us, Belarusians. It's especially important today when our country is drawn into this insane war against Ukraine by Lukashenko's regime. The dictator invites Russian nuclear weapons and Russian war criminals to our country. Of course, it's against the will of the vast majority of Belarusians. Those who disagree are thrown behind bars. The repressions haven't stopped since 2020. They have only intensified. There are several thousands of political prisoners in Belarus. My husband Sergei is one of them. Lukashenko's political opponents are held in inhuman conditions, beaten and tortured. Every day, people are arrested for their anti-war and pro-democratic position. All these thousands of people are innocent and must go back home to their families. So you can support them by writing them a postcard or donating money to our solidarity funds, such as Buy Soul or Buy Help, or simply by sharing their stories with your friends in person or in social media. Today, Belarusian culture shares the fate of Belarusian democracy. It's either banned or in exile. The Jewish people know the story all too well from their own history. But I firmly believe that one day Belarus will be free. Belarusians who live in exile will return home to our motherland, where the rule of law and democracy will be restored. So thank you all for your solidarity with us.
And now we are moving on to the artistic part of the most artistic part of our event. Ms. Batia Donner, the lecturer, curator, lecturer of different, actually, Israeli academic institutions of fine arts, will present her take on how art and poster influences the social change. Batia, the floor is yours.
I will try to sound artistic as promised. But before introducing the awarded posters of the competition, I would like to relate to certain aspect of the essence of graphic design, or what George Him no. Of what George Him, which was born Jerzy Himmelfarb in Warsaw, used to call art for a purpose, distinguishing it from visual art. By choosing one generic example of a work of art which is using both kinds of visual languages, I will question the effectiveness of art as a utilitarian and persuasive tool. Then we'll watch together some of the Polish posters which were awarded in the competition, expressing solidarity with the Belarusian population suffering. And to conclude our short journey, we'll focus on a unique phenomenon, the Grappist collection in France, which was related specifically to Henryk Tomaszewski and generally to the Polish poster school as a source of inspiration. As mentioned, I would like to start by showing a work of art, not graphics, which was inspired by modernist graphic concepts. As the artist Larry Abramson had written, and I quote, "The corona pushed me in two opposite directions, one pointing inwards to the language of autonomic art and the other outwards to the energetic protest which took place in the public square. In one of his paintings, combining the two ways of looking, the personal as well as the collective, he wrote in black square letters, that's what we are watching here, "Ani Achol Od," and I will explain, quoting the late Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin last words before resigning, "I cannot anymore, Ani Achol Od." The work is confronting Begin's words, which were considered authentic and honest, even by his political opponents, with an up-to-date context. The allegedly sincere words of the present Israeli Prime Minister during the Corona period, and I'm trying to be politically correct. In addition, the grid covering the surface of the painting, which was created by painted masking tape, reminds us Israelis of the false and quite ridiculous protection Israeli citizens were offered during the Gulf War in '91. Combining traditional artistic tools like a canvas and oil or acrylic paint with graphic elements and typographic language, Abramson was formulating his own personal protest. But does it work? Does it move people to action when watched in a clean and elegant gallery space and not on the streets? Can art, not graphics, with its personal, sometimes complex views, function as a political or propaganda tool? Those are questions that I think that we have to think about. Actually, especially in this context. Actually, we're not dealing here with political art, but rather with art whose subject is politics. And I didn't use the term propaganda. Those issues are essential while relating to political visual materials. In order to express solidarity, mobilize people, or engage them in political activity, there are some basic conditions. The message should be unambiguous, simple, clear, and usually implying no subtext. And the visual symbols and metaphors well known, popular, and understandable. It has to be immediately understood and based on intuition and on common basic knowledge, conditions that are not essential for understanding art, but they are essential for understanding graphics in general and political graphics especially. Now we'll move to the sorry. This was it's not a part of my lecture, but this was the exhibition as it was shown in Poland. Now, I'm okay. I'm afraid to swallow it.
I can hold it for you.
You think so? Okay.
No.
I'm afraid of my eyes. Well, the awarded posters of the competition, White, Red, White, expressing solidarity of Polish people with the Belarusian struggle for freedom are standing beautifully to those requirements I mentioned before. The current poster competition, it's much easier, thank you. The current poster competition supporting the movement for freedom in Belarus was organized 2 years after Alexander Lukashenko forged the elections results, destroying freedom and democracy in Belarus. Just the title, White, Red, White, is already introducing the context. Protest and opposition to the present corrupted regime in Belarus. But when the words are written in Polish, not in Russian, it indicates mainly solidarity. Mentioning the symbolic flag's colors holds a whole historical narrative, which was proudly re-exposed after Belarus gained its independence in 91 until the 95 referendum. Then it became a symbol of opposition and resistance carried by growing groups of dissidents. Most of the Polish awarded poster designers took it literally and restricted their design to the two colors, red and white, which they share as Polish citizens with the Belarusian symbol of protest. They use red color sometimes as a warning sign, sometimes as a symbol of blood and suffering, and sometimes as a revolutionary symbol, and above all, always as a national symbol. In parts of the posters, it appears as a figure, in others as background, or as the color of the written letters, as we can see here. But I'll elaborate about the posters later. The posters' titles focus on the concept of freedom. People create freedom. I'm quoting. On the way to freedom, the hard way to freedom, Free Belarus, or Voice of Freedom. One of them is dealing with legal aspects, referring to the Belarusian leadership as outlaws. Make law, not war, as a very obvious, very well known, as a paraphrase to the well known slogan from the 60s, Make love, not war. And two others relate to historical memory. The world remembers, and 26 years of occupation. By using the term occupation, it creates a linkage to the dark days of the German occupation. The posters drew inspiration from the Polish well-known school of posters and its prominent graphic designers like Henryk Tomaszewski or Jan Lenica, while updating them by means of geometric compositions and stylized details, sometimes applying characteristics as painterly gestures and linear quality, combining printed slogans, often hand-lettered, with popular symbols to create a concise metaphor. The visual applied symbols are mostly universal in their character. A hand clenched into a fist as a sign of collective power, multiple footsteps as traces of human basic existence, a victory sign, as mentioned before, or a peace pigeon. They are understandable from first sight, and no further explanation is required. As a hybrid of words and images, those posters create a certain aesthetic tension and reveal the graphic artist's emotional involvement with the subject, solidarity with Belarusian people. The kind of emotional involvement is quite exceptional when looking at their day-to-day graphic work. I will show you some examples of the I will show you some examples of the previous works of some of the graphic artists, and you'll understand the point. Uh, because the word is the usually work, and I'm saying something very general. The usual work is concentrates mostly on commercial or institutional graphics, which concentrates uh, which means branding, marketing, and advertising, as well as promoting social or cultural institutions. No personal involvement is needed in that kind of work. Facing the present challenge, part of the designers elaborated their visual language, turning it more personal and more authentic. Some of them avoid using rigid geometric forms, often apply rough brush strokes or handwritten letters, and almost all of them use universal and well recognized and popular metaphors. Now we'll watch some of the posters, and I hope that it will be much more understandable what I just said now. Okay, that poster got the first award, and you are invited to correct me if I don't pronounce the Polish names. Now we are watching a typographic poster, of course, indicating the lasting period of resistance, 20 to 22. But I invite you to pay attention to that last two digits, which create a heart, which means solidarity, which is a common theme to most of the posters. It is very simple and very understandable and quite nice. Ah, okay, sorry. Now, those are two of the same graphic artist's works. It's a very similar language. He just used his experience and his tools to design the poster for the competition. Now, that's the second award, and that's very personal. In my opinion, he's the best graphic designer in the competition. Okay. Ah. I saw that you referred to the sentence I said. Um, Now, here, as I mentioned before, you see handwritten letters, which makes an atmosphere of an authentic atmosphere, authentic and immediate, not overworked, and he makes here a, a, a kind of wordplay. Be Be means Belarus, but he didn't write it. The completed word is missing, only hinted, as freedom does in Belarus today. Uh, to sum up, it's handwritten, authentic, very intuitive, simple, and witty. Uh, those are few examples of his works, which are beautiful, really extraordinary. And as you can see, every one of his works has a different attitude, a different language, a different graphic language. And that's how he works, as I understood. Now, the third award, this poster wasn't done by a graphic designer, but by a photographer, Evgenia Musheva, which, as I understood, she came from Belarus, I don't know when, and she lives in Warsaw. And it's unique also in its subject. It's a feminist poster. I don't know what's written there in Russian, but I can guess according to the Polish translation. Uh, huh? Yeah, okay, it's the same in English, in Polish. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's quite evident. The naked woman's organs are marked by a segmented red line, as if they were beef parts. She's lying as a product, ready to be wrapped on a plastic sheet. Uh, it's very understandable, very and very quickly. Now, she's a fashion photographer, and that's her usual works. Here she did something really extraordinary, and we'll see another one of her works later. Uh, that's a very I can even say modest poster, but it's very delicate and very sensitive. Freedom creates people. The freedom means brotherhood. Freedom means brotherhood. The small, fragile, and multiplied human figures are connected to each other in endless chains. It's simple, it's clear. Sorry. It's simple, it's clear, and I have nothing to add. That's one of her previous works. She deals with political subjects. It's not her first touch with politics. Uh, that one always the V signs, the well-known international V sign. I think that Churchill was the first to use it, and it's very understandable as well. The two fingers pointing downwards, and traces of red paint, which means blood, means failure, and the other one, which is small but growing and directed upwards, means victory. It's very simple, and those are other two of his political works. Now, I want you to pay attention to the. I spoke about handwritten letters. Sometimes, and in a very similar meaning, graphic designers use rough brush strokes with no. It's not meant to be nice. It's meant to be intuitive, and that's what makes the meaning of this poster. Which what I'm trying to say that the means the graphic designer is using has very much importance sometimes, as in this case. Also in this case, it's the same. Rough and expressive brushstrokes represent uncontrolled and disordered movement, in contrast to the geometrical flag on the right side, which is very ordered, and it is a sign of civic order, and it's kind of reflecting the present situation in Belarus. And that's another work of this the same graphic designer. That poster, I didn't understand it, and Yulia tried to explain. I wasn't completely convinced, but what she told me makes sense, because if the name is me, we, the words there mean, Yulia.
Nas, nam, vas, nas.
Okay. Yeah. Because we are together, yeah. Okay. But look at the graphic means. First of all, the red color here, and it's definitely blood, which draws the context, because if we are trying to think about the same words when with another kind of letters and another colors, they can mean something completely else, completely different. And that's his usual work. He's a digital designer, specializes in design of visual identification of companies and public institutions, which means industrial work. And when we go back to this poster, it's in a whole contrast to his usual work. Now it's the other poster of Yevgenia Musheva, 36 years of occupation, and I'm reminding you, she's a photographer, not a graphic designer, and her works are really have a different character from the other works, and it's very clear in its meaning. A few of her other works. Now, that's a kind of, exercise. Um, Positive, negative, front, back, they are interchangeable. As the colors red and white. And I'm saying it because this young graphic designer is just a student. He's young. He's experimenting. He's experimenting, and it's impossible to speak about visual language in this case, because he's just trying, he's just learning and trying, and I hope that he's going to succeed, because he looks talented. And that's, if I'm not mistaken, the last one. Quite obvious, puppet theater, cutting the threads. And here we're talking about a digital and branding designer, which means very resourceful and very. Those designers are used to work in different contexts, in different graphic language, and that's what we see here. And from here we'll continue. We'll go back for a moment to the 60s, to the late 60s. And you'll see the reason and the context. In 64, 65, Pierre Bernard, a French graphic student, discovered graphics art in Poland, then part of the Soviet bloc. We should keep it in mind. He was hired as an intern by the Polish poster designer Henryk Tomaszewski. Wait a minute. Okay. Thank you. He was who introduced him to cultural graphics and exposed him to the crucial effectiveness of the graphic message. Tomaszewski's work, and I hope that all of you heard about him, and at least part of you know his work. Tomaszewski's work was impressively modern and powerful. By the means of graphic language, he was struggling for the independence of graphics and cultural message at the time of Polish socialist realism. We shouldn't forget it. The posters had been exhibited then in Poland, had been produced by both painters and graphic artists, and their subjects were new for the young French graphic designer. They were theatrical posters, cinema posters, posters dealing with poetry and sports. These subjects were not being addressed in France at the time because poster designers were mostly advertising commodities. Pierre Bernard became aware, thanks to his Polish master, that, and I'm quoting, a poster is the taking possession of a public message by an individual. It is a public object that belongs to him intimately, since it is his creation. It is the individual's investment in an act of collective exchange. And that's very that point is very very meaningful when talking about the competitions posters. Upon returning to France, Pierre Bernard met at Art Deco Academy in Paris two other students, François Millet and Gérard Paré-Clavel, who joined him and many other design students in May '68 in drawing posters for the students' movement before establishing their design collective Graphis in the '70s. I'll show you some of Tomaszewski's works just in order to remind you. And we'll see his great influence on the French posters, and then, by the way, Pierre Bernard wasn't the only graphic French student who studied at Tomaszewski's studio. There were a few and very prominent graphic designers. And that's what Tomaszewski did for Solidarność. You see here traces of what we were talking about, the posters of the competition, the importance and the effect of handwriting, the effect of colors, and so on. For 1 month in 1968, they were drawing posters every night, printing them by themselves and distributing them all over the city walls before first light. Tomaszewski's influence was evident both in spirit and in graphic language as well. When establishing, I will show you a series of. I didn't hear you. Sorry. What's written here is don't be sheep. The French, in contrast to the nowadays Polish designers, were not vegetarians in all means. L'état c'est moi, the state is me. Louis, it's both of them. Even the goal is the Hitler there, yeah. As I said, they weren't vegetarians. L'état c'est chacun de nous. The state is every one of us. And you see here the fist, which we saw, and the fist has a long history from the Russian Revolution. Our fight continues, and it is this one is very similar in spirit to the poster we saw before. I take part, you take part, so on. They enjoy it. To be quiet means collaboration with the poisoning. And what's the poisoning? Radio, press, and television. And think about it, they did it during the night, designed, printed it, and it appeared in the morning on the streets for a whole month. And that one, of course, reminds us, it's a completely another subject, but the image is very similar. Again, the title is They Poison You. Radio, television, and so on. But the image, maybe it was even an inspiration. I want to sum up with a short quoting of an interview which Pierre Bernard gave in 1991. When he was interviewed, he was asked. 1991 means from 88, from the beginning of the 70s, means 20 years of difference. He was asked whether he still believes that graphic design could affect social change, and he answered, and I quote, "I don't believe it as naively as I did 20 years ago, but I still believe it. Graphic design is an expression of society and it changes society. I don't believe it in revolutionary design, but I do believe that reactionary designs exist. It's always easier to perpetuate the same forms and contents rather than to search out new ones. Of course, design cannot change everything, but nonetheless, it's the search which leads to change." Pierre Bernard's words are pointing to the evolution we can trace when starting to follow the way that Tomaszewski's work was marked the beginning of through graphist posters to the polished posters of the recent competition. The recent posters are clearly formulated and they speak for, not against, as the French posters did. They speak for freedom, they speak for solidarity, they don't speak about the oppression oppressing force. They don't speak about the leaders. They don't speak against, they speak for. And they are much more polite in comparison to the French ones, in shape and words, much more politically correct. Most of them express pain and sorrow in order to call for solidarity with the oppressed Belarusian people. Their premise is identification with the victims, usually not attacking the oppressor. And it's an interesting point. As the French graphic designer did, is it an issue of change in time spirit? Probably, as Bernard indicated, or a result of calculated strategy. I don't know, I don't have an answer. But It's quite an interesting point to think about. And that's it.
Thank you very much to Batia Donner. And we would like to proceed to the second to the last of our point of our event today, the message from Ukrainian side of the situation, geopolitical situation. Also through recorded message, as Madam Director said, Mr. Tomasz Kosakowski, the director of the Euro-Atlantic Institute, who is actually now in Poland, who was supposed to be with us, he recorded, he addressed the message, and we will shortly see it.
Good morning, my name is Tomasz Kosakowski. I'm a president of Euro-Atlantic Institute, and I would like to say a few words about the geopolitical situation in Belarus. A national constitution was adopted in March 1994, in which the function of the prime minister were given to the president of Belarus. Two-round elections for the presidency on 24 June 1994 and 10 of July 1994 formally unknown Alexander Lukashenko into national prime ministry. He guaranteed 45% of the vote in the first round and 80% in the second, defeating Vyacheslav Kabich, who received only 40% of the votes. In 2011, Belarus suffered a severe economic crisis attributed to Lukashenko's government's centralized control on the economy, with inflation reaching 108%. Later, mass protests erupted across the country following the dispute 2020 Belarus presidential election, in which Lukashenko sought a sixth term in office. Neighborhood countries Poland and Lithuania do not recognize Lukashenko as the legitimate president of Belarus, and the Lithuanian government has allowed a residency for the main opposition candidate Swiatłana Cichanouska and other members of the Belarusian opposition in Vilnius. Neither is Lukashenko recognized as the legitimate president of the Belarus by the European Union, Canada, the United Kingdom, also United States. The European Union, Canada, United Kingdom, United States, and all the countries imposed sanctions against Belarus because of the rigged elections and the political oppression during ongoing protests in the country. Future sanctions were imposed in 2022 following the country's role and the complicity in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russian troops were allowed to stage part of the invasion from the Belarus territory. These include not only corporate office and individual officers of the government, but also private individuals who work in the state enterprise industrial sector. Norway and Japan have joined the sanctions regime with aims of the isolate Belarus from the international supply community. most major Belarusian banks are also under the restrictions. Last few days, we saw the situation in the Russia. A huge danger, and at this moment is the possibility of building the Wagner base in Belarus. It is very likely that the Wagner group will be used to fight with the oppositions and will be used to suppress protest in Belarus. Unfortunately, the perspective for the democracy in Belarus is very bad, and what we can see, it's possible that in near future Belarus will be part of the Russia Federation. That's the biggest danger until today.
And now we will see all the posters that were distinguished in the competition in Poland.
Dear friends, I would like to say thank you for Batia, the first, and also you mentioned our famous graphic Henryk Tomaszewski. In our library you can find his book, his work, so if somebody would like, so it's your disposition. And also I am obliged to say thank you our patrons, so let me in short way introduce our patrons, especially from Poland and Belarus. It's Bielsat Television, Radio Wnet, Kurier Galicyjski, Belarusian House in Warsaw, Kazimierz Puławski Foundation. But now I think, because we have had a lecture and speech about the posters, let's say a bit political posters, so I would like to know your opinion, how we can support Belarus. Did we have power enough? Can artists change the reality? As a Pole, I'm also very afraid about my country, because we are on the border with the Belarus, and of course, how you know from the media, that now the Wagner's group is staying and it's working or cooperated together with Lukashenko. So maybe we can now open the small discuss. Please, if somebody would like to say something, we have also our friend from Belarus. You can be translate. So the microphone is yours, please. Julia, coordinate.
Alexei, can we ask you to share with us maybe some of your experiences? Because prior the event, actually, we had some conversations, and it was very interesting to firsthand hear.
So hello to everyone. I will speak in Russian language because it's difficult to me to say what I want to say. He's Borя. Yes. Or thank you so much for it. Окей. Что я хотел сказать? Во-первых, это очень интересная встреча, очень интересные симбиозы происходят у нас. Лично я, например, не знал про то, что есть польский институт в Тель-Авиве, и узнал о нем только вот когда мы пришли вот в эту выставку.
First of all, I would like to say that I didn't know that Polish Institute existed before this exhibition, for this event.
И спасибо, да, большое за то, что белорусская повестка все еще существует, и она продолжается вот в виде таких выставок, в виде мероприятий. Это важно.
Thank you very much that we still have Belarus topic in medias, and we have events like this with posters.
Мне кажется, что сегодня очень важно, вот все строят границы, да, строят, пытаются какие-то стенами оградиться, выстроить границы. Я считаю, что сегодня границы, наоборот, нужно стирать.
Everybody tries to build the borders, but I think that we have to do the opposite. We have to abolish the borders. Thank
Да,
you.
мы должны оставаться, наверное, и белорусами, и поляками, и израильтянами у себя, но я считаю, что культура и культурные ценности, которые мы проносим, они должны стирать наши границы и давать нам возможность быть вместе.
I think that we need to remain Belarusian people, Polish people, Israeli people.
Что за счет культуры, за счет культурных ценностей, которые мы будем проносить вместе, таким образом мы сможем и дальше делать то, что мы должны делать, наверное, то есть проносить какие-то свои культурные ценности дальше.
And thanks to the culture.
Да, я сейчас поясню, что я имею в виду.
All our countries, we can build a world without borders.
Thank you. Yes. Я хотел бы еще пару слов. Я хотел бы вам сказать, что на самом деле процессов происходит намного больше, чем нам кажется. У нас есть белорусское посольство, которое представляет вот Боря и Максим и Саша Фруман. Фрумана вы наверняка тоже знаете.
Yes, we still have the national ambassador. Boris is People's Embassy, and the Boris is the representative today of the People's Embassy.
Скоро, я думаю, что это сделает очень тоже большое и хорошее дело для белорусов, которые здесь, в Израиле, и которым важно проносить белорусские свои ценности далее.
And I think that it will be done a lot of good things for Belarusian people here in Israel, for whom it's important to do.
Это то, что просто нужно нам всем знать. И еще есть очень большое молодежное комьюнити. У нас есть большой актив молодых ребят, которые здесь готовы тоже вот так ходить и поддерживать свою страну отсюда.
And there is
Родную
a
страну.
big community of young people here in Israel, for whom is also important here to support Belarus. And who are ready to get engaged into this kind of issues.
В Иерусалиме существует арт-пространство, можно так сказать, называется Бессарабия, которая собрала под своей крышей за больше, чем 13 лет существования не только белорусов и украинцев, но и в принципе очень много ребят, и израильтян тоже, и тех, кто приезжает из других стран, не только из Беларуси, России, Украины.
There is an art center which is called Bessarabia, which connected people not only from Belarus but also from Ukraine and Russia.
Беларусь, Россия, Украина. И на базе этого арт-пространства мы делаем День воли, белорусский День воли. Вот мы уже провели 2 дня воли в 25 марта и планируем провести дальше. Мы 3 уже провели, извините.
And on the base of this art center, there was made 3 events. The event is called the Day of Freedom. On the 25th of March, there was one of the events.
И мы планируем проводить это и дальше, и, возможно, мы хотим добавить еще белорусский кермаш сюда, да, который проводится каждой осенью, например.
Kermash is fairs, right? And we also would like to provide fairs in the future, Russian fairs.
Да, в общем-то, на самом деле можно говорить много и философствовать тоже, и делать дела, но я считаю, что самое главное это то, что происходит. Water, please. внутри себя, передавать это другим поколениям, передавать это нашим детям. И таким образом Беларусь будет жить, как и любая другая страна, для любого другого неравнодушного человека.
Yeah. So basically, since we are the Polish Institute, we will concentrate on the cultural extent, and on this basis we will develop further our cooperation.
Да, большое спасибо. И если можно, еще пару слов я бы хотел передать Борису, который также представляет канал Белсат здесь в Израиле, и который представляет Белорусское народное
And
посольство.
if I can, I would like to ask now representative of Belsat, based in Israel, to say a few words.
Well, I'm not so good speaker, especially in English, but I'll try to say a few words. Actually, People Embassy of Belarus in Israel, our mission is actually to connect between Israeli politicians and between opposition politicians in Belarus, and also to try to develop some cultural notes between Israel and Belarus, and as a part of it we are creating our cultural events, and we also filmed some already we filmed some clip for that we showed in Belarusian Congress, and currently we are during the work of our second clip that will be performed by Irena Kotvitska, famous ethnical singer in Israel. She came from Belarus, and as Alexei said, we will happy for any cooperation between us, and we will happy to invite you to our next events.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for coming today, to both of you, and thank you for supporting this event. Thank you for your declaration and readiness to cooperate with us. We will be very happy to do that. So thank you, but I have a question. How big is the Belarusian community in Israel?
Well, in Syria it's like 120,000 in Israel, but we have big part of it that is really active people,
Yes.
especially young people.
So it is for us a big audience. So we should do something to stay with them and to support them, but not only to support them, but to support each other. This is important.
Of course,
that we will do events and in partnership. So our cooperation should be a cooperation of partners. But anyhow, it is our first event to support democratic changes in Belarus. As you may know, we are regularly organizing events in support of Ukraine. And as it was said today, but all our, the distinguished guests, the Madame Cichanouska and our ambassador to Belarus and others all said that it is important that we stay together, Poland, Belarus, Ukraine, because only through uniting our forces we can bring about a change. And today we focused a little bit of the power and the influence of the culture and the message the culture brings to support the fight for political change and Ukraine. So thank you very much for participating in this event. I would like to ask whether any of you, our guests, would like to say a few words or to ask a question. If not, then I think that we should now finish our official part of the event, and with Madame Director Kushtal, we would like to invite all of you to join us with a drink and some little thing with the drink. Thank you very much once more for coming. Thank you.